Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Restaurant Technology Network's Town Hall today. Super excited on the heels of MURTEC to bring you this Town Hall. We have done this one time before with the startups. We do a Town Hall after the big MURTEC event because we have Startup Alley, which is really a super highlight, I think, of the MURTEC event. And it's where we nurture startups in the Restaurant Technology Network community. And we bring them, it's a fierce competition. And then the top 15 make it to the show. And then from the top 15, we have judges that elect our top 3. And those top 3 then get to present live from the MURTEC stage in sort of a Shark Tank style Q&A with our high-powered restaurant technology judges. And from that, we select a winner. And when I say we, I mean the entire room of MURTEC attendees selected the winner. But I'm telling you, it was fierce. In fact, I think it was neck and neck with these 3 until the very last second. So we're thrilled to have the top 3 on our town hall today to spotlight what these new and innovative startup technology solutions are for the restaurant industry. And I know it was all a buzz at the show. And so we wanted to bring them to you live and in person, as live as we can after the show. In case you missed it, or if you just want to hear some different Q&A with these folks, we have them on the line here. So today, I'm thrilled to welcome Fred LeFranc, who is a personal friend of mine and a longtime industry veteran, probably needs no explanation. Fred, thank you and welcome to the show. Fred is going to be our moderator. He's going to introduce our panelists and dive right into a stimulating conversation. If you have any questions for our panelists here or for Fred, throw them in the meeting chat and we'll get to them as we can. But I'm going to leave it to Fred to guide a fascinating discussion. And Fred is a champion for the industry. If many of you don't know him, his title officially is Chaos Strategist, which I find that he fits that completely and perfectly well. He's also on the board of the Restaurant Technology Network. So thank you and welcome, Fred.
Thank you very much. It's very nice of you. And I heard, I said I couldn't make MURTEC this year, but I heard it was like a cage fight, worldwide wrestling. And of course, the finalist, the victor, was Vivian Wang, who soundly defeated her staunch opponents there. So that's great. So let me just make a little introduction here. You know, obviously, the restaurant industry has continued to evolve in its digital tech-enabled platforms. MURTEC has been a leader in showcasing these emerging technologies. And I remember when Startup Alley was being discussed, because there were so many, you know, for the longest time it was POS heaven, right? Those were the big dogs. And that's really changed a lot in the past few years. And so Startup Alley brings in new ideas that are designed to help restaurant companies either increase sales, connect closer to the guests, engage employees, and a myriad of other cost-saving, ideas. And you can't keep up any longer with how many new companies are coming in. So the fact that these 3 companies have been able to successfully climb the ladder and be selected as a top finalist is quite an achievement. I want to acknowledge all of them for having done so. Today's panelists were the top 3 finalists, as I mentioned already. They represent companies that help restaurants source employees, companies engage more closely with guests previously unidentified to a brand, as well as add revenue that was unknown to exist. So it's very interesting to see how this goes. So it's a very disparate panel. They don't really have anything in common other than they offer tech-enabled platforms to help solve problems for restaurants. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is I'm going to ask every panelist to introduce themselves and to please give us a brief origin story about what your company does. And we're later on going to ask you more about how you came up with the idea, but just give us a quick overview, elevator pitch. We'll start with the winner, Vivian. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me, Angela and Fred. Super excited to be here. So I'm Vivian. I'm the founder and CEO of Landed. At Landed, we work with over 400 businesses like Cava, Bar Taco, Panera, and we help them take care of hiring from the team member, front of house and back of house, all the way up to managers. Ultimately, hiring has been the #1 challenge plaguing the restaurant industry before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, right? And so for an industry that sees about, on average, 130% turnover, 200% turnover, yet the restaurant is really focused on delivering an amazing guest experience and delivering an amazing food and beverage product, those things are kind of at odds. So that's where Landed really comes in, is we help restaurants get staffed so that their managers, so that their existing team can go back to what they want to be focusing on, which is the guest experience and the products that they're delivering to their guests.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Frazer, are you in Ottawa or New York today?
In Montreal, but
Oh,
New
I
York.
missed them all. Okay, but in Canada. I should have said Canada or the U.S. But Frazer's one of our nice neighbors to the north. So Frazer, please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your company, Tablz.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first and foremost, lived in, worked in the restaurant industry my whole life, like so many on this call. And, I just have a real passion for hospitality and economics. So, for those that were at MURTEC, you would have heard me say that this is the 25-year anniversary of the open table reservation widget. And every other reservation system has followed suit. And, from a hospitality perspective, it's always sort of baffled me, Fred, that, that's the extent of our hospitality before that guest arrives, is offering them 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. So what Tablz really does is we work with amazing operators to look at their guest services. And what we do is we 3D map the inside of their restaurants, and we work with them to identify their key real estate. And Tablz really works to service 20% of some of those top diners in the world. Those people that, in an airline industry expect first class, comfort plus, and extra legroom. And people are now for the first time ever able to upgrade their guest experience. It starts with the table upgrade. There's a lot more to it beyond that. And we work directly with their existing RMS systems like an Open Table, a 7 Rooms, a Resi. And the most important thing I'll leave here is that every upgrade that someone makes, be it $5, be it $100, is the first transaction ever in the restaurant space that has no cost of goods. And it is unbelievably important to the future of the full service restaurant economic model.
That's great. Thank you so much, Frazer. And last but not least, a second-time participant here, back for an encore appearance.
Back to get beaten again.
Yes. A year ago, his hair was twice as long and he had no fuzz on his face. But Abhinav, welcome back. Give us your story.
Yes, absolutely. Pleasure to be here. So I'm Abhinav Kapur. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Bikky. We are a customer data platform built exclusively for multi-unit restaurants. What that means is we pull together all your in-store and off-premise data across point of sale, payments, online ordering, loyalty to try and map the entire customer journey. We have millions of consumer profiles in our system, and all of that data tells us two things. First, 80% of guests typically never come back after their first visit. Second, the 20% that do come back can drive more than 60% of your brand's revenue. But unfortunately, as an industry, there's little to no. I mean, the irony here is that we're in the hospitality business, and success starts by understanding who your guests are and serving them. And there's essentially very little to no visibility into who the guest is behind every single transaction. You can look at loyalty program data, but that's 10 to 20% of your customer base, or you can look at sales. But the problem with sales is it tells you what happened. It doesn't tell you why it happened. So what we do at Bikky is we pull in that data across those channels that I mentioned. We create a guest profile based on someone's credit card ID, based on their email address, based on their phone number, and we're able to understand where that guest is coming from, what they're ordering, what makes them loyal, and what makes them churn. And so the entire, again, philosophy behind the business is diving into your data, making it actionable in ways so you can truly understand the guest behind every transaction and make decisions across marketing, finance, real estate, pricing, operations that improve every facet of the guest experience based solely on the customer data.
Fantastic. That's great. Now, what's interesting here is that, COVID is now somewhere in the past, but we're going to have the residual effects of it for a lifetime. It has permanently changed the industry. And you'll notice that everyone that's on our 3 finalists, not including me, are very young people, right? So this is a generation that was born with technology in their crib. I come from a generation that we had no technology. When I was a young man, if there was a remote control for a television, it was me. I had to get up and go change the channel. Now we have a whole different relationship here. And so, Vivian, I'm going to start with you. You are someone that was born to essentially a restaurant family of sorts, got away from it. And just like, The Godfather, just when you thought you got away, you got sucked back in. Tell somebody with a little bit more detail about how you sort of stumbled across this idea of Landed and how that can help restaurant companies.
Yeah, so as Fred alluded to, I grew up in the restaurant world. So my parents immigrated to the US from China, and their first 2 jobs were being a dishwasher and a waitress at a local Chinese restaurant in Ohio. Now, 2 decades later, they're both software engineers. And so when I kind of was surrounded by all these folks who, first of all, immigrants coming here, but also just didn't really have like a community to figure out like what did the career life path look like for somebody in hospitality. So I was there. Now fast forward in college, that was kind of when gig economy 1.0 was taking off. You have DoorDash, you have Lyft, you have Uber, you have all this kind of new labor model that's ultimately quite competitive to the hospitality industry and the traditional part-time, full-time W-2 employees that it employs. So then, fast forward again, I found myself in retail, and I was working with the CEO at the time of Gap Inc., which is, one of the biggest retailers in the world, also has a turnover problem. Ultimately, we ended up overhauling like our entire like hiring systems, rethinking about, how we can get the best people into our stores the fastest. So speed and quality being two major themes. I took a lot of that and made that into Landed, because we service everyone from like a single location, coffee shop or chef-driven concept, all the way to like, large multi-hundred unit QSRs. So kind of took a few different directions, but then ultimately found my way back here. And I think that COVID really is propelling the industry forward, because it's forcing people to develop 360 brands. Every brand has to have a 360 brand that stretches beyond just the guest, but also to the employees that are working for them. So that's one of the themes that I've seen come out of COVID, and it's very exciting actually, just given my parents' like origins in the US.
Vivian, when did you launch your company?
March 14th, 2020. And if we all remember, 2 days later, the entire world shut down. So it was an amazing time actually, because overnight we saw thousands and we had just put ourselves up on the App Store, like in V1 of Landed. And we had thousands and thousands of employees like pour in overnight with no marketing, no advertising, and they found us. And so it made our job all the more important to, as quickly as possible, help these essential workers find new opportunities, especially coming from an industry that was doing a lot of furloughs, still needed to support their families. So it made our work very purpose-driven from day one.
Yeah, no,
well, day three. Day three.
I'm going to come back to that. I get more specifics about how an employee can access it and companies use you. I'm going to flip over to Frazer. Frazer, your website is fantastic. If anyone hasn't seen it, I've asked Angela to see if she can put everyone's website on it to really explain what it is, because when Frazer says the first time you can make money without really trying, there's no cost. There is a cost of source, but very, very profitable to do. It's a great example where Angela's company solved a problem, and still does, because people need employees. But Frazer's stumbled across the fact that a lot of restaurants, many beautiful restaurants, have high demand tables, but there was no way to access them. So talk a little bit more about what the process is that a restaurant goes through in order to sort of use your service. You mentioned at the beginning that you sit on top of all these reservation services, but help everyone understand that has never been to your site or never talked to you about how it really works and operates. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with a small shift in perspective, and not dissimilar to some of the most famous companies in the world, Uber, Airbnb, where you had founders look at cars and say, well, why can't more people sit in those cars? We looked at apartments that said empty. Well, we're looking at real estate and saying, why are we treating every table the same? Because our guests don't treat every table the same. So why don't we provide that level of hospitality that people have wanted forever? You laughed at the good, a good old movie with but the Goodfellas, Fred, like the fact, there's people slipping money to the maitre d' for as long as restaurants have been around. So why is that money not going to an economy, a restaurant economy that is really hurting for profitability? So quite simply, it's a shift in perspective for operators. We just say, work with us and let's look at, again, 10 to 20% of your real estate. Those booths along the window, those table along the window, that nice group table that is a perfect for a 6 or an 8 top or more. And we look at that 15, 10, 20%, depending on the dining room. And we love to say every hospitality group is different. Never mind, every property is its own baby and its own operations. And we just mirror what their current operations are with that. So we go in, we scan that, we identify the tables. And what happens now at the restaurant's website and on their Instagram, when you click book now, so essentially wherever that reservation button traditionally lives, instead of just automatically sending you to that widget, 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. and now says, hey, would you like to upgrade your seat? Not dissimilar to asking if you want courtside tickets at a game or if you want extra leg room or a better hotel. Everyone does this but us. And then from there, the users has this beautiful 4K camera view of the restaurant where you can walk through it for those, that haven't seen those 3D cameras. Some of our operators have spent not millions, but tens of millions of dollars designing these dining rooms. And it's just insane to me that there wasn't a process before ours to show off that. So, really that's the core of it. Tablz is actually very, very simple. When the booking is made through your website, which is done through Tablz, that reservation comes from us right into your reservation system. So you're not managing 2 tablets. Whatever system you love, whether it's 7 Rooms, whether it's OpenTable, whether it's all the others, that's the system you've chosen. We work with that.
So Frazer, your site works very much like a real estate site where they have the little circles on the floor, the halos, and you sort of click on that and it takes you to another room and you can spin around and so forth and so on. How long does it take for a restaurant to actually launch once they decided to use your service?
It's so easy. We just need a clean dining room is what we say. So just make sure it's camera ready, right? These cameras are no joke. They're 4K 3D cameras. They'll pick up that mop that you forgot in the corner, right? So the thing is, we can shoot daylight. Some of these scans, like at night, candle lit. My goodness, do they make these dining rooms pop? And this is just phase 1 for the operator. There are properties, take for example, Daintree in New York and Refinery Rooftop, where not only can we capture them in certain ways, but we can actually book you for like the sunset. And there's ways that we're going to start embedding Instagram and other content. So not only do you see this 3D environment, but we can even pull from your threads of people who, everyone's up there trying to Instagram this or that. So what we really are looking to do is enable that operator to show exactly the hospitality experience and vibe of their dining room to those guests before they arrive. And certainly that isn't happening today.
So I'm going to go back to my question. How long does it take for an operator to launch? That's what I want to know.
It can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the size. We just did a 18,000 square foot property. Took them about an hour and 45 minutes. So it's as simple as that. We just need a clean dining room. And we're good to go.
So the cameraman comes in, clean dining room, takes the pictures, and boom, you're ready to go. That's fantastic. It's a wonderful idea. Abhinav, I'm saving the best for last. So
I was going to say, is this the order in which we got our votes? That's what it seems like. So.
Well, we know who number 1 was, but not necessarily. It could be a beauty contest, and you sadly came in 3rd, but that's okay.
Either way, I come in 3rd, so it's fine.
But here's what it is. So a lot of people still don't know what a CDP is, and so customer data platform. What you've shared, and I've had a chance to get to know you and get to know the product and see what's changing. And so Abhinav's on the cutting edge. I mean, you started as a loyalty company. When I met you in Vegas a couple of years, you were in a loyalty panel. Fast forward 6 months, and now you're a CDP, right? So What is a CDP? And let's just talk a little more slowly about the disparate sources that you're able to gather, because you mentioned that at the loyalty program, I captured 10, 50% of the customers, but you'll capture a much higher percentage of it. So just walk us through that a little bit slowly so the people who don't understand what it is can appreciate what you're offering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the simplest way to think about it is, how do you have the same level of data and understanding of guest behavior on every channel, on every type of guest, that you would normally get from just your loyalty guests? Now, the loyalty guest, again, is the most easily accessible form of customer data that a restaurant has today, because someone is downloading an app or they're ordering direct from your website and they're giving you an email address or a phone number to market to them, to track their behavior. But again, the loyalty program typically only gets 10% to 15% of the customer base. And beyond that, the loyalty program guest behavior is super biased. It's already people who already love your brand. And so of course they're going to download your app because they want to order frequently. Or it's people who love getting discounts. And of course they want to be on the email list to get the discount and place an order based in response to that. So what you have is this barbell strategy, right? Your super frequent guests on one side, no real understanding of the guest in the middle, and then your discount oriented guests on the other side. And where a CDP comes in, it says, cool, let's pull in your reservation data. Let's pull in your POS data. Let's pull in the payments data. So even if a guest is anonymous, meaning we can't market to them directly because we don't have their email address or phone number, we can at least track them based on their credit card swipe or their reservation booking. And when you start to introduce that level of understanding of guest behavior, you start to be able to answer real questions about the business that previously you would have only been able to answer through sales data. A perfect example, we talked to the chief marketing officer of a 70-unit brand last week, and they said, look, when I go into a board meeting, I would love to say to the board, here's how many new customers we acquired in the last 90 days. We spent all this time, money, training, effort on launching an LTO. Instead of just walking in and saying it was 3% of mix, I don't know if that was good or bad. We can say, here's how many new customers we acquired because of that LTO. Here's what their frequency was 30, 60, 90 days after they ordered that LTO. And now I know what my strategy is for next quarter's LTO because I've actually used customer level data, not just sales data, not just loyalty program data, to understand the impact of this major initiative in the business.
So Abhinav, let me ask you a clarifying question. So I know in a loyalty program, people opt in. So I've identified myself, you have my email address, but now you're identifying third-party delivery, credit cards, whatever the case may be, anonymized data because of privacy laws.
Right.
How can someone then, so let's say you have captured more people, but how do you market to them specifically if you really don't know who they are?
I think you raise an interesting point, which is the goal of a CDP, part of it is one-to-one engagement and one-to-one marketing. And that's what the known customer data is for. But the goal of the CDP is not carry one-to-one marketing, carry personalized engagement to every single guest, because you can't do that because you just don't have they haven't opted into the email list. Right. The goal instead is to think about ways that operations, pricing, and marketing decisions actually impact customer behavior. I'll give you another perfect example here. So we were talking to one of our customers, and we, instead of looking at a PMix, we map all their menu item data according to how many unique people have ordered it over the past year and what percentage of those customers came back within 90 days. Okay. And they have one menu item that's in the top right of the chart. It's the highest ordered, it's the highest retention. And the CEO said to me, he's like, you just basically defined our pricing strategy for the year ahead. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, I can change the price of that one menu item by a few pennies, and it'll generate more revenue for me than if I raise the price of everything else by 5 to 6%. And beyond that, when I raise the price by a few pennies, because you're capturing all the credit card swipe data, all the reservation data, I can say, am I still bringing back customers to the restaurant at the same rate as I was before I raised menu prices on that one item?
That's great. That's a fantastic.
So I think that's like a more holistic view of, again, marketing, pricing, and ops all together.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Frazer, I want to flip to you real quickly, because as I was listening to Abhinav talk about identifying customers and sending them marketing things, are you using any of the fact that you have customers coming in, they identify themselves, I want that table, I'm going to pay $20 for it. Are the restaurants, or are you using that data and information to go back to them with more offers or just communications? What happens with that?
Yeah, we have a really strong thesis on this point, and it begins with the fact that we don't want to build tools that other people are building like Bikky, and we don't want to build tools that already exist like the RMSs. So first and foremost, we are looking at ourselves positionally around data and around that guest experience to make sure that we're sending our information to platforms that know how to use that data even better than us, like Bikky's a great example, and making sure that whatever reservation system you use, like OpenTable or Seven Rooms, that's still your main source of guest management, right? So that's our overall thesis. But now we are doing things that obviously, hence the question, that other people can't do, right? So you look at that ability to specifically match make someone with an experience like that booth table that someone really wants, or this type of chef experience, like we can do things that others cannot. So one big thing is that restaurants are actually going to begin, this is a big new product feature, they're going to actually be able to start. So as I've explained, today Tablz, you start with your reservation system and where you begin, your book button, right? But you can actually go from the other perspective. What are the reservations I already have coming in on Saturday night? and how can I actually send to specific guests specific options. So I can actually go through and say, hey, it's your birthday, it's your anniversary on Saturday. This is a great anniversary table. Hey, you're an 8-top, you want a better TV view, or you have this great dining option, or table that's far more comfortable. We can actually begin to get to that level of guest service specialization. And this is huge. We're about to pilot a number of these with a number of great operators. So, talk about where loyalty can go from there, because, as sort of what we've been saying, we can do a lot of micro adjustments, but this can get down to an individual human level, and everyone has their preferences.
So there was you're familiar with Talk, I assume. You might even integrate with them. So they started this premium seating. So if you wanted to sit at the counter where the chef was making the food for you, you paid more on a Friday night at 8 o'clock than on a Monday at 8 o'clock. Is it similar in that regard? Because it's demand yield. It's like hotels and airlines do it all the time. They're pricing it based on the peak demands.
Yeah, big fan of any system that was trying to get there. And Talk built arguably sort of the first e-commerce module off of a reservation system. But as you described, it sort of ends there. And I'm the first to say it. Frazer, Nagy, and Tablz did not invent premium seating. It's been around forever, but it just hasn't been done in a way that has actually captured captured that guest segment that matters. And if you think about it, like Open Table, even in 2017, I believe, had a beta where you had like a 2D floor plan, like a movie theater. But the reality is, outside of maybe very specific examples like you gave, like, oh, I want the chef counter and the chef's tasting experience, which Talk absolutely mastered. Well, I don't know what Table 5 is. I've looked at, even myself, who has managed so many floors, has played the Tetris game of Open Table for most of my career. If you told me a restaurant that I've even been to several times where Table 5 is, I have no idea. And those 2D floor plans aren't sufficient. So like the 3D technology combined with how we look at the real estate is what changes the whole operational game for the restaurant, but also changes the guest experience through and through. So we can partner with other things like that, but fundamentally, that's what makes Table very special.
That's great. And by the way, shout out for a millennial to talk about an old school game like Tetris. So he just all the generations there. But I want to go back to Angela, because Angela, I said I wanted to talk more about how an employee and a potential customer interfaces with your app. So walk me through sort of that employee journey when they say, okay, I want a job, and they found you somehow in the app store, and now they're going to put their name forward. Walk us through this so we understand how that works.
Yeah. So if you're a candidate right now, yes, Angela,
I'm sorry.
You're calling
I keep calling you, and you guys look like sisters. I'm sorry, but Vivian, I apologize. Go ahead.
I know you're talking to me though. So when you think about the candidate experience right now, candidates, they're applying to 14 jobs in one sitting, right? It's very much a candidate's market. And when we think about like the places where candidates are spending their time, Gen Z, millennials are spending a third of their waking hours on social media and on their phones. And actually over 50% of hourly employees actually don't own a laptop or a desktop computer. They are primarily using their phones, right? They have smartphones, Androids, Apple phones. So when we think about the experience, you have to meet them where they are, which is that phone. So when you're with Landed, ultimately, we actually take on the persona of the manager that is of that company. So we are reaching out as if we're that manager. We're delivering that personalized experience to that candidate in a very speedy way, because again, it's a candidate's market. We ran a survey last year to over 1,500 restaurant employees, and we heard from them that a third of them would just take the first job that's offered to them, regardless of any other characteristics. And so once a candidate has applied, then we take on that persona of that manager and we reach out immediately. We're able to do that via our conversational AI technologies and then also our human recruitment specialist team, because there are sometimes times when ultimately AI can't respond to every single question. And there are different policies from restaurant to restaurant. There's different vibes. There's just different characteristics that mean a candidate is qualified for a certain restaurant, and that's what we're evaluating for. So we're texting back and forth with them. We're meeting them on their phones. It's text message first. If you're not on text message in the audience, you need to be. Text message has an over 95% open rate, whereas email has an under 5% open rate. So if you want to be actually getting in touch with people and actually and actually developing that relationship before they come in for that interview, you have to meet them where they are. So the speed piece is also important because, you know, candidates, if you're not getting back to them in like an hour or two, maybe you're getting back to them that evening, the next day, that's already way too late. They're applying to 14 jobs, keep in mind. And I hear a lot from restaurants that, like, you know, I'm getting ghosted, people are not responding to me. And then when I ask them, hey, like, when did you respond to the candidate after they applied? They're like, well, I mean, I was really fast. I responded to them like 3 days later. Well, at that point, that person's already gotten a job. So, and then it's kind of a negative selection bias where the people who are still left over 2 weeks later, when you're finally reaching out to them, might not be the highest quality candidate. So it's really important to be mobile first. It's really important because your entry-level team members now are completely different than they used to be, right? They're on their phones. You have to just keep that in mind.
Yeah, what I love you're doing, of course, now everything's AI all of a sudden, right? Because that's the big buzz, you know, after ChatGPT came out, it's like, oh, I want to be an AI. But you're doing it. When we had our initial conversation, you know, what you've done is a little bit of social engineering and using technology to solve the human problem of speed to respond to a candidate. You know, not only are you enabling an employee to go in and apply for multiple positions, but you're also getting right back to them. And so the advantage is that you have now engaged them. Now, they may not know that it's a human being, or if they do, they don't care. It's just they're acknowledged and they're able to go through that process. And so, you know, right now the restaurant industry has a chronic labor shortage. Of course, I learned a long time ago running restaurants that the best way to not need employees is stop losing employees. That's a whole nother culture. That's a different thing. But you're able to sort of help them fill that empty bucket that they keep on looking for. How customized is your program to individual brands? Because the employee that is going to go work at a Chick-fil-A is going to be different than a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Raising.
100%.
So how do you?
Yeah, and you know, we work with Think Food Group, for example, too. It's a very elevated dining experience. Like, different things constitute qualified. So it's absolutely customized to the brand, because we understand that no brands are alike. That's where the quality piece comes in, because we do the sourcing, the vetting, the engaging, and the interview setup. So in that vetting piece, what does the quality candidate actually look like? Maybe it's certain shift availability. Maybe it's a certain amount of work experience. It could be, you know, for your Dunkin' Donuts, your team members need to start their shift at 4 a.m. That's kind of a, you know, abnormal ask in the QSR industry, right? So there are different things that constitute qualified, and we always sit down to understand exactly what that looks like. And that can vary from location to location, role to role. But ultimately, it's still very important, if you're thinking about scaling your restaurant operation, to have some type of standardization from one location to the next. We work directly with managers and also, like, you know, directors of talent acquisition and directors of HR. And typically we will work with the HQ team, the support center team, to develop kind of those standards to ensure that, you know, we have the right compliance with how, you know, we're vetting candidates in the first place. And then for the manager, that's where the logistics comes in, because, you know, they might be able to have time between lunch and dinner rush to actually do interviews. Maybe they're out sick that day, they need to cancel all their interviews. Landed is really acting as that hiring concierge for that manager, kind of like their, you know, full-time 24/7 recruiter that can take care of any of those things that come up day to day.
And so, similar question to what I asked Frazer, how long does it take for a company to actually launch on your platform?
Yep, so a huge piece of what we focused on in the past year are integrations, because most companies already have some type of applicant tracking system. They have an HRIS system, payroll system. So we actually sit on top of those systems and flow the data in between them to ensure that your managers do not need to learn a new system. So typically, from a setup standpoint, it takes 2 business days after we know exactly what locations and what roles you want us to hire for. And so it's super fast. And before we activate, we always do a tutorial for all the managers, because, you know, even though we're taking a lot of that work off their plates, we need to let them know, hey, you know, if you are sick that day, or if you do need to change some of your requirements, you can reach out to us, and you have somebody who's Yeah, 24/7 at your beck and call from a recruiting perspective. So 2 business days once we get all the information from the business.
And to add new job openings, is that fairly easy to do on a back-end platform?
Yep, super easy. And it's actually automated. If you already have the job in your applicant tracking system, which is already probably part of your like job rec management strategy, then we just pick it up automatically. Everything's real time integrated.
Fantastic. Abhinav, I want to switch to you a little bit. First off, same question. How long does it take for something to launch on your platform?
Depending on tech stack, 2 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so a lot longer lead time. Okay.
Well, I would put it in context with what it takes to launch a normal customer data platform, which, you know, it's funny, McDonald's just announced yesterday that they launched with mParticle as their customer data platform. And in the LinkedIn post where the head of analytics is talking about what it took to launch mParticle, they said it was a start to finish project of 18 months.
Got it.
So to launch a normal CDP, which the enterprise brands do, and to build this entire stack yourself, it'll take 12 to 18 months. We simplify all of that down to 2 to 6 weeks because our integrations are built for the restaurant industry. The way we capture data and display the data and encourage restaurants to use the data is built for the restaurant industry. And so again, like better, faster, cheaper is sort of the way we position Bikky specifically relative to a traditional customer data platform like mParticle or Segment.
Got it. So in a way, it sounds like you're able to turbocharge a loyalty program because besides their information, the loyalty programs are the ones usually communicate out to the guests. You're not sending SMS, you're not doing social media, you're not doing email. You're providing the cohorts that they can identify through their behaviors and so forth and so on. So you've got more people. Do you work in parallel with the loyalty company? Give us an example how someone would work.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example, right? So the value, again, of having data that instead of looking at 20% of your customer data, you're looking at 80% of your customer data. We say tongue in cheek, you know, we can collect everything except cash and certain third-party delivery platforms. Some third parties give us data, some don't. So everything but cash and some third-party data. And one of the key metrics we look at in the product is how long does it take for a guest to go from their first visit to their second visit? Let's say it takes 90 days for a traditional in-store customer. We've seen restaurants whose loyalty program data says it takes them longer to convert a guest from the first visit to the second visit. So if a traditional customer is 90 days, the loyalty program will be 110 days. And that is an eye-opening experience from an operator standpoint, from a marketer standpoint, because they say, oh my God, I have good loyalty adoption. I have X million or X hundreds of thousands of members. I've got, 20% of them checking in on a monthly basis, but none of that is driving actual incremental frequency. And so by partnering with a loyalty provider, partnering with the other pieces of the tech stack, we can actually say, here's what a loyalty program customer is, and here's what a regular customer looks like. Here are the differences between them. Here's how much valuable a loyalty customer is. Here's how much money you should spend on a traditional in-store customer to acquire them, to convert them to the loyalty program. So again, having data that's outside the loyalty program puts every other major piece of the puzzle in context, and I think gives you, a full picture of guest behavior, what they're doing, and then how to successfully leverage that data to drive whatever your business outcome is.
So do you work with all loyalty companies? You're Switzerland, you're agnostic?
We're that's a good way to put it. We're Switzerland. We're minus the banking secrecy part because, we like to be transparent, but yeah, we're Switzerland in terms of being agnostic, at least with who we play with. And yeah, we play nice with everybody, I would say.
That's great. That's great. Frazer, to the extent that you're able to share this, what kind of revenue can a restaurant expect using your platform? Because it's not that it's free, because you got to pay something for that. But nevertheless, and again, if you're on the water, that might have a higher demand. If you're in a tourist area, whatever, but just give us a sense of how the economics work out.
Yeah. So what makes Tablz such a special model is, of course, to the operator, there's no monthly fee. There's no fee. Again, think of Tablz far closer to an Airbnb than another, open table-like system. So operators can join for free, and we only share on the upside of the profit. So when someone books a table for $20 or $50 or $100, well, the restaurant takes 70% of that and we take 30%. But again, that is just the upside. And that transaction has no cost of goods. So we like to say it's sort of like the anti-Uber model. We're not taking 30% plus of your food and beverage. We're not another booking platform that's taking a percentage of your sales. You keep 100% of your F&B. So
the incremental dollar, that makes sense. But again, my question is, what kind of revenue can a restaurant generate average?
Yeah, so what's so fascinating is that, you know, we just had a restaurant last week do over $2,000 in 1 week, just from their Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. So that's they're trending towards our first 6-figure restaurant, just on table upgrades. And what's equally exciting again is they're only doing that revenue from their website traffic. And if you looked at an average restaurant, their booking volume, most restaurants see 10 to 15% of their total booking volume come from their website. So it's a very small sliver. So to do that type of revenue from that type of traffic is actually extraordinary. And from your previous question around, you know, integrations and thoughts around loyalty, well, the product I was alluding to where a restaurant could actually send tables to a guest, well, that opens up 100% of their booking traffic. So what is the upside on this bad boy? Whew, it's hard to measure. We know there's restaurants that might do 15,000 on this platform. We think there's restaurants that could do $250,000 off of 8 tables, which is just extraordinary.
No, fantastic. No, that's great. Angela, let's talk a little about back to what you're doing. You spend a lot of time on employees, but you also are able to recruit managers. And my sense is that journey is slightly different because it's a different level person, different position, different career aspirations. Is the journey for a manager candidate similar to what an employee goes through? The process may be the same, but is there any more curation that goes into that? Because that's another critical role in the restaurant industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you step out and you look at the general manager role as a whole, it's become more complex than it has ever been. Of course, you have like the classic, you know, in-room dining, you might have drive-through, you have curbside now, but also like third-party delivery. You have all these new like hygiene practices that everyone has to do. And you even have ghost kitchens coming up and introducing an entirely new menu to your back of house, right? So the restaurant manager job has become quite complex. And it's really like the heart of your business because your hourly frontline employees, that's the entire company to them is their general manager. And for the support center, in order to reach your frontline employees, you have to go through your general manager. So when we think about the general manager role, you know, every brand kind of has different like sets of requirements for that. And that's where the customization of the vetting comes in. But the general manager role, you know, might have everything's still the same, right? You still want to be reaching them over text message. You still want to be making sure that you're personalizing the outreach using, you know, conversational AI, or you're reaching out and kind of drawing upon their past experience so that they feel like you actually read their resume and you're not just sending out a blanket, like mass templated message, right? So again, you want to be developing that relationship. The interesting thing is that, like, you know, different roles in a restaurant will have likely different hiring managers. For your general manager, maybe you have your support center actually being the one to interview. So we do allow for different roles to have different hiring managers and for each role to have customized vetting requirements. So we will.
When a manager submits, are they submitting a resume? Because one of the big complaints that people talk about job boards is that the resume formatting is destroyed at just text and you're not able to highlight certain things. How does that work for your platform?
It's true. So depending on the companies, we don't recommend requiring necessarily a resume, right? Because they might have amazing experience, but they just haven't like taken the time to put together a resume. And the other thing to think about is like the best candidates are passive candidates. They're people who already have jobs. They're not spending time polishing up their resume, right? So yes, if you want us to require a resume, of course, that's just a vetting point. It could cause some friction and that will vet some people out, but maybe you're okay with that. Again, it's completely up to the customer. We're just here to provide recommendations. But I think a lot of that vetting really comes through in the actual like text message back and forth in that interview process. So a big thing that I always hear about for general managers is communication skills and personality. how can you evaluate that without speaking to them face to face? Of course, you still have to do that, but beforehand, you can certainly ask them like short answer questions like, why do you want to work at Kava? You know, what, like, and if they don't take the time to respond back to you, then obviously they're not that interested. If they do take the time to respond back to you, then Landed's conversational AI technology can evaluate the communication skills, the personality, the tone of the message that's being sent back. So it's quite sophisticated and it can be done at scale. And that way, you know, of course, hopefully you find amazing people who you're interviewing, but if somebody's unqualified, then you're not wasting your team's time on talking to somebody who's just, you know, maybe not going to show up to the interview or ultimately is not even a good fit in the first place.
So there's been conversations in restaurants where nowadays, because of being short-staffed, they close on Sunday and Monday. They have reduced hours. They close at 9 o'clock during the week, maybe 10 o'clock in the weekends. And that's a long, I mean, even New York City that had 24-hour restaurants no longer has 24-hour restaurants because they just can't get staff. So if I'm a company and I have a severe shortage or whatever you want to call it in a specific city or part of a city or a state, are you able to target more applicants through some outreach program that you do, or is it all dependent upon people reaching through you?
Yes, so we actually have the sourcing function where we partner with 80 plus job boards and all the social media advertising platforms to generate more applicant flow if a specific location does not have enough people applying. So some of the job boards we partner with are the big ones: Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor, Career Builder, Culinary Agents, the whole gamut there. And on the social media side, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. And we actually have an advertising team that develops those ads for you. So of course, restaurants don't have like an entire ad department, right? So we will develop the ads, meaning the imagery, the messaging, and we'll be iterating on those because ultimately it's not like a one and done thing. Depending on if it's back to school season or it's summer season, maybe you have some special like sign-on bonuses or like seasonal hiring rates that you're wanting to advertise. We'll sit down and understand what it is you can bring to the table, and then we'll shed that in the best light when we're trying to attract applicants to the table. Because, you know, applicants care about different things. Some people, it's location, it's pay rate, it's the benefits, it's the work environment. And we're able to, through conversations with the candidates at scale, know what is actually landing, no pun intended, with the applicant who's applying.
Oh, that's fantastic. Let me flip over to Frazer for a second. So Frazer, you're a relatively young company. You're new. You got a long way to go in terms of, you know, capturing more of the sit-down restaurants that have the qualifications of what you want. Is there, in your product roadmap, is there anything else that's on the horizon other than what you're currently offering? Is you really just doing what you do, keep it narrowly focused and deep, and just go after the potential addressable market that you have in front of you?
Yeah, you know, from a founder answers, what we're trying to build here at Tablz right now at this stage is a relationship-driven organization. Because, you know, the hospitality industry is so driven by that, making sure we're working with the right groups first and foremost, and the right general managers and the right operations people. So, you know, this is a long road. You know, we're building something big here. It's going to take years, if not a decade, to get all the restaurants on this thing, and that's totally fine. That's all right. But from a product standpoint, you know, it's similar to think about. We want every one of those reservation buttons to sync to Tablz, where again, you're provided, hey, do you want to upgrade your seat via Tablz, or no, thank you, put me anywhere via OpenTable, for example. You know, I spoke a little bit about what we're calling that retargeting, merging what we're doing with some of the loyalty initiatives and premium guest services that restaurants want to do with matchmaking their top guests with the best experiences. And then the last piece that is really exciting, there's been that one operating team that hasn't brought up events and group sizes. And I just want to preface this is that, like, it's crazy to me is that my director of customer success told me this. It's like, well, if you think about it, over the last 25 years, we've digitized reservations from 1 to 7 people. But after 8, it's an analog way of doing it. Restaurants still force you to call them, right? And where Tablz sees a really big opportunity is guest sizes between 8 and 16. Or really anywhere where there's a la carte group opportunities. Well, why can't you, like, why is it impossible to book a table for 10 people in any city? Like, that is, and the demand for that is enormous. Groups above 20, 30, when you're getting into like true private events, that's its own little beast. And we're working with groups, but that require event coordinators and all of that. But there is an unbelievable multi-$100 million opportunity just in the, I would call reservations between 8 and 20 people.
That's interesting. So, you know, as I listen to it, you know, Vivian, your situation is pretty self-evident. I need employees. I need someone to help recruit them and so forth and so on. And in a way, Frazer's is in a similar situation, because if I have a beautiful dining room and I've got tables that are high demand because by the water, whatever the case may be, then that situation is already sitting there. But Abhinav, yours is in a very different space. How does a restaurant
No one knows what to do with us.
I know that. That's why I'm asking the question. In other words, how do I know?
I was saying it tongue in cheek, but yeah.
How do I know I need a CDP, and what do I need to do to get prepared to utilize your service?
Yeah, I think it's a very simple question. Is like, what's the cost of not knowing who your guests are and what they're doing? In an industry whose entire reason for being is on serving the guest, it is wild to me that, and I mean, it's nobody's fault. I don't mean this in a way like it's the restaurant industry's fault. It's just the tech stacks haven't existed or been open to this kind of change until stuff started digitizing during the pandemic. But I would frame it in that way. For an industry whose whole mission and whose whole reason to exist is in understanding, knowing, serving, and pleasing the guest, not so that they come back once, but so that they come back over and over and over and over again. We spend a lot of time, brands spend a lot of time and a lot of money in trying to think and making assumptions about, if we launch this menu item, it should do this. If we open this location, it should do this. If we raise prices, we think it'll do this. But the problem is that they're still saying we think. And what we want to transition them to is saying we expect. If we open this store, we expect we can acquire X number of new guests in 30, 60, 90 days. When we plan our real estate footprint, we want to open in these markets because demographically they overlap with our highest frequency customers, which we expect are families with household income of greater than $120,000 with some college education. These are decisions that restaurants have been making for hundreds of years. And we're finally at the point now where tech stacks are digitized enough, where data can actually come into the industry and where operators can leverage that data to stop thinking and start making informed decisions and understand what they should expect as a result of those decisions. That's, my philosophical soapbox answer. In terms of what someone needs to do to be ready, it's just have the right tech stack that Bikky can integrate with, and we'll get you up and running. So, which is, to be perfectly candid, is, most point of sale payments,
right,
online ordering platforms out there.
That's good. So I'm gonna start with Frazer, then go back to Abhinav, then end up with Vivian, and just ask Frazer, as you look forward to the rest of 2023 and beyond to 2024, are there any trends or thoughts you have around the industry and the digitization of the industry that you'd like to share with us besides what you're doing at Tablz?
I think, I'll talk about maybe in that context, the elephant in the room, just around everyone's fears around the economy and recessions and all these things. And in our perspective from Tablz, then this won't apply uniformly across to everyone. There will absolutely be maybe some declines in some areas of the economy, but the restaurant industry is going to remain absolutely extremely strong through the next year. And specifically for Tablz, the markets that we're operating in, whether it's Chicago, Toronto, New York, Miami, there is just unbelievable growth there right now, and we'll see a recession if there is one. Again, they said it was going to happen last year. They said it was, and it's far from it. We're targeting markets which are just the meccas of restaurants, and these groups are well positioned to continue a 10-year roadmap of delivering amazing hospitality and guest services. So, we're dealing with some of the best groups in the world, and they're investing in the future, and they'll have even more opportunities to grow. So we're positioning Tablz to make sure that this is a long-term position for them and a long-term relationship.
It's fantastic. All right, Abhinav, you have a disruptive technology. Where do you see things going in the next year or two?
With us specifically or more generally?
Whichever way you want to answer it.
Yeah, I think I look at where restaurants are today, and I always compare it to where retail was a decade ago. And the thing that happened in retail is, if you were in the middle, like JCPenney, and you tried to be all things to all people, you got crushed. And the things that actually thrived in general retail as digitization, e-commerce, all that stuff grew, was people were either highly niche and experiential, like Tablz, or restaurants that, list on Tablz, or they were very convenience oriented. If you were in the middle, you got crushed. And I think there is I can't predict that it's going to happen, but if we read the tea leaves of what has happened to another industry very close to ours in the past that went through a similar disruptive phase, you can say that there are going to be, restaurants need to decide what they want to lean into. They need to either be focused on, and that doesn't mean accessibility, affordability is gone. It just means you need to really know who your core customer is, and you need to focus on serving them to the best of your ability. And you need to dial in everything from ops to pricing to marketing to menu to really serve that customer. And that's one end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum is just being a convenience provider and doing it something better, faster, cheaper in immediate vicinity to the customer, and executing on that value prop. But I don't think that there's room to be in the middle over the next couple of years anymore.
Idiocracy doesn't differentiate you. That was good. You got Vivian's all excited because I think she flashed back to the Gap when she was.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah. So Vivian, you get to close it out with what your prognostications are.
Sure. So I think everybody on this call should know that only 38% of restaurants are going to be staffed in 2023 to full staffing levels. So if you're thinking about technology and how to get yourself to be part of that 38%, you're doing it right. If you think everything's just going to get better and turnover rates are going to dip below 100%, you can keep on dreaming, because that's definitely not going to be happening. It's a candidates market, and it's going to continue to be. Not because of COVID or, unemployment benefits or anything like that, but simply because the same employees who used to be working for restaurants now have infinite other options, like gig economy jobs and remote work jobs, remote customer support type jobs that they can tap into. So really what restaurants need to be thinking about is developing 360-degree brands that delight not only the guest, which is what Bikky and Tablz have been focused on, but you also need to think about that frontline employee. Your employees need to be delighted by your brand as well. So paradoxically, for being people businesses, I find that hospitality, really sometimes is not realizing the employee's full developmental potential. And capabilities really can't shine in your employee base when they're just eating up their time with rote, menial tasks, responsibilities that are eating up their time. Because ultimately, restaurants are not an immensely high margin business. You need to leverage your resources well, because they're finite. You have a finite amount of resources. You have a finite amount of time in the day. So you can either spend that time on high leverage things that are going to actually spur revenue growth and make you a $10 million restaurant instead of a $5 million, instead of a $1.5 million restaurant. And you're going to be able to do that through automation. It's already taken over, almost every other industry. So restaurants are going to have to tackle commodity tasks, I call them, with automation. And you're going to need to propel your employees towards more fulfilling high value roles that actually spur business growth.
Oh, that's very well put. Well, I want to thank Vivian, Abhinav, and Frazer for being finalists, and Vivian, of course, for having won. This has been a fascinating conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Angela to close it out. And it's been a pleasure to have all of you on the panel today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks to everybody that joined the panel. You all three were just as eloquent and amazing as you were on stage at the conference. If you want to get in touch with these folks, we've pasted in their LinkedIn. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me if you want a direct connection to anyone that's on the panel, or even to our friend Fred here for fearlessly leading us through what it was a fascinating discussion. And thank you, Fred, for doing it so eloquently. And Thank you all for joining us until the next town hall. And if you're interested in learning more about RTN and what we do in the community, look at restauranttechnologynetwork.com or reach out to me anytime. And we look forward to seeing you on the next event. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.